Sorry, just starting the stream on two platforms here. So this is the next stream of development on Arelith. I'm Irongron, the server owner and creator of most of the content. For Twitch viewers, if anyone does join, there were a few people earlier. I'll just drop a link of this video from YouTube on Formians. This is a Formian Dungeon. So hang on, if anyone's not sure what they are, except copy paste doesn't seem to be working. There we are. I just sent a message to nobody. So yeah, Discord doesn't allow for the saving of videos while you're streaming them. Twitch does, so hence I'm putting this on Twitch at the same time. If anyone is trying to share the Neverwinter Nights tool set via Discord, keep in mind it crashes almost immediately. That's why I'm sharing my entire screen in this case. I plan on doing this quite often, either working silently in the tool set and just having the stream turned on while I do, or having it on with the microphone and just giving people feedback and taking questions while I work. I do want to eventually make videos that are more of a basic introduction to the tool set, looking at how Arelith was made in the past, how to use the engine, and just starting with the basics and then going through the different tile sets, how to use them effectively and stuff like that. But for the time being, I'm just getting on with projects I'd need to be doing anyway. Now, this is the second stream I've done today. I'm in Europe, so I tend to start quite early with these. And I was working on this for a couple of hours at the same time as just chatting, and I made the really rookie mistake of not saving. I could extract some of the files to save it, but not all of them, so I need to repeat some of my work. So I'll quickly go through these areas so far. This is going to be an addition to the Underdark. This is going to be a 7-area dungeon. It's the one that's really, really very big. One area I haven't made are these collapsed pits, which will exit from this tunnel. And here we have a bit of a labyrinth. This is going to be full of Formian workers. This is where they're excavating. These are the excavation tunnels. There'll be plenty of climbing spaces and little things to discover. You can see from the map there's a lot to it there. This is the reskin of the default mines and caverns for Neverwinter Nights. This is the Zvercules reskin. It allows all kinds of new features, including raising and lowering the terrain. So for instance, if you enter this cave here, down these pretty cool steps that that aren't allowed for in the original, you can see there are these ridges here going up to the top here. Now, there are no stairs, so these will just be places where characters that can climb might want to go up there and see what they can find. Other than that, this is just a bit of a labyrinth that will lead to the gates of the Formian cities. Formians are civilized monsters when you get to the upper echelons of the castes. They have high intelligence, cultured, and generally pretty good. Sorry, I should add that whenever I develop, or almost all the time I develop, I have 4 small children in the house, aged between 3 and 10. I try to keep them from the microphone and also not neglect them, so I will be muting from time to time, and if you hear screams in the background, I don't have prisoners, just children that are fighting. One moment, I have to mute. Just 1 minute there. Mute, I'll be Okay. Yep, I'm unmuted on both now. There was a disagreement between two children. So where was I? Yeah, so once you get through these excavation tunnels, you come to the gates to the actual settlement itself. These are the gates here. Not as easy as it seems to put a door somewhere where it's not supposed to be, where it's not supported in the tile set. I always think if you are using a really large area, and this first area is incredibly large, it can be good to put some small areas afterwards. And then characters will go into the city. Now this glorious looking area that is just a hovering door is a hovering door because I worked on it this morning while doing a stream. I made this entire area, at least the layout, and then the toolset crashed. I extracted the files from the temp0 folder, which anyone that's building with Neverwinter Nights needs to become familiar with that folder. Pretty rudimentary. You find it in your Neverwinter Nights game folder under modules. When you have the toolset open, it creates the temp0 folder, and in there you find all the various resources. If you crash and you haven't saved, it's your only option is while the game is frozen to open that folder and get any of the files out you've been working on that you can save. That's what I did here. So the file that stores the location of objects I managed to retrieve, hence this door. But the file that actually has the area layout was lost, so I have to redraw all of this in a moment. But let's go back here. Just a quick word when you're making transitions. It will create a waypoint. The waypoint in this case is where the characters travel to when they go between areas. The Neverwinter Nights toolset will create the waypoint in the middle of the transition like this, often facing the wrong way. I think they always face north or south or whatever. So you don't want the characters appearing here facing that way. Obviously, that's the wrong way to face. And also, if they appear in the transition as soon as they start walking, they'll get booted back to the previous area, and that can just happen infinitely. So move the waypoint beyond the trigger and point it the way you want the characters to be facing when they come through. I'm going to use a bit of an angle here because you can see the stairs are in this direction, so move it enough away from the waypoint that hopefully nobody will get accidentally stumble back into the transition. The transition itself is obviously too large there, but it will do. And then if you want to have a map note, into the properties, the advanced tab, waypoint contains a map note, in this case just gates. Now one of the disagreements I have with Action Replay, who I've worked with on Arelith for many years, is that when he's creating Underdark areas, he doesn't like to put in map points. He wants to keep the players guessing where they are and generally leave them lost. I have a different philosophy. It's easy enough to get lost without map points, and when I'm playing, I like to be able to use them. I like to use the mini-map to see where I am. You know, particularly if I'm not concentrating on the game, you know, which if you've been playing for a few hours, you're often in that position. Um, you notice there, I had to re-click on this even though it was highlighted. Beamdog allowed us to open the areas in different tabs, which wasn't possible before, but it can throw up a few sort of small, I don't really call them bugs because they're not severe, but certainly quirks. So let's see. Okay, that map point's done, telling players there's the excavation tunnel. And then we need another map point here. That will tell them that this is the citadel. Probably a word I overuse, to be honest. When you're in the frame of mind of creating an area, it's often quite different to the frame of mind that comes with actually writing, you know, the content, coming up with the words and stuff. Most people should, of course, plan everything out beforehand before building the areas. To be honest, I've made so much for Arelith over the years that I'm not really given to doing that anymore. I will just experiment in the toolset and create things as I go, maybe come back and write more content later. So I'm going to light these tiles now. This is the I'm not lighting individual tiles is often best. I mean, almost exclusively best if you want to create a strong atmosphere. In this case, I'm not going to because I want to create a lot of Underdark dungeons in a relatively short amount of time, and I'm not going into excessive detail given the amount of areas that I want to add and the other projects I have going. The toolset is often crashing when doing tile set lighting, so if you hear me curse and the toolset crashes when I do this, then and there we are, but that's not a crash, it's just a common error that you get with some of these hack tile sets. Once that pops up, that SQRT error, you might find that you just keep painting things with the mouse until you like right click or double click or whatever. So anyway, I don't want the main light too down here to be white. I'm going to make it brown to give it a bit of an earthen feel, um, because Formians dig tunnels. I mentioned earlier to anyone watching the stream, I like Formians as a monster for the Underdark because while they're outsiders, they do exist on this on the prime material plane. But more importantly, they're lawful, neutral creatures, which make them quite a suitable enemy for an area of the server where many of the player characters are chaotic evil. It, the if you're looking through the palette and the monsters available in Neverwinter Nights, they're almost exclusively evil, and that can raise a problem if you're playing an evil character. Sometimes you want to just go and beat on something innocent. These creatures are far from innocent. They use psionics to enslave people. They require tremendous amounts of protein. So there's every reason for a nearby civilization to want them dealt with. In this case, there is the added reason that they are causing instability in this region of the Underdark with excessive tunneling. I mentioned earlier we have these excavation tunnels, and beyond it, in one sub-area, that will be a kind of optional area of the dungeon, there are these collapsed pits where they continued digging down and everything fell away. So, back here then. Oh, one more thing I'll just quickly show if anyone's watching this later or interested. I moved this door artificially by a trick you'll see me do pretty soon again. It's commonly used when making advanced areas. There's not normally a door transition here. Normally with the tool set you can go to features and put a door in, but this diagonal door is not normally supported. I moved it over artificially. But that meant that there is this walk mesh here left behind it now. I don't want characters walking there, and I definitely don't want enemies spawning there, because when this door opens, it will be a transition, glowing blue for players to pass through. If they click on it or walk into it, they move to the next area. Now, if you've played this game a lot, you'll know that if monsters spawn the other side of a transition in an area you're in, it becomes really difficult. They can attack you. It's very hard to attack them without accidentally stepping through to the next area. So, I needed to leave the floor in place because there's supposed to be a passageway there, but make sure players can't walk there, monsters don't spawn there. So I used invisible walls. This is a default Neverwinter Nights placeable. If you're wondering why they look like they're so far below the ground, there are at least two placeables that when you change the status of them to turn them effectively invisible or to change their lighting, one is the invisible wall and the other is actually a window, but not in building adornments, in miscellaneous, I believe. Here we are, this window. I'll quickly show this if anyone's interested. Now, a lot of people don't even notice this about the window. Now, not all placeables have different statuses. With catapults and doors, it might change them to being sprung or open. Normally, you right-click on them, initial state there, and then you can choose destroyed. It means it's not there. Activated, deactivated. Most placeables don't have different statuses, and so you can't actually change them. But let's look at this window first because it's quite interesting. You wouldn't immediately realize that it has a different status because you can only change the status on a placeable if it's not set to static. Static basically means that it is loaded in with the area, can't be interacted with in any way, can't be destroyed, affected by magics. It's basically just dressing. If it's static, you can't change it. But if you change this from static, and it's static by default in the tiles there, suddenly you can change its state to activate it. And there you get this pretty light. It's pretty good in certain areas, but much like the invisible wall, when you change its status to deactivate it, to make it invisible, it's not actually making it invisible. It is doing a cheap workaround, and you have to bear with me then. It takes a while for object properties to open up, which I'm not sure why it never used to pre-enhancement. So deactivate that. Now you can see that's invisible, the colours change, but if you look under the ground, there's that other window pane. And what was presumably that you think is invisible here is here, far below the ground. So this generally doesn't matter because players can't see under the ground, but maybe you've got a chasm, or maybe you have this at a high vertical. This window, for instance, you might want to have high up on a building, but the problem is, if you do put it high up, then look what's there below it. So that's an issue that people don't often realise, that I just thought I'd quickly point out. But I don't want to spend too long doing tuition things because I have the thankless task of having to quickly remake an area I already made earlier. Thankfully, I think I can remember it pretty well. This is the Versatile Dungeon tile set. You can get it on the Neverwinter Nights phone. It's incredibly pretty textures, but like a lot of these hacks, these mods, you need to be prepared to do a lot of dressing. There aren't many features. It's pretty much just empty rooms and corridors. You know, in the originals, of course, you have buildings and these little placeable structures. So here you can see where I've created an artificial door again. By just leaving a gap in the wall and putting a door over it. As I say, you can't place doors down normally like that. There's a trick to it which I'll get to later. And I'm going to want to put down invisible walls for the same reason that I was just explaining before. We don't want players getting on the wrong side of a transition and sort of end up hopping backwards and forwards or trying to fight monsters through a transition. So a way to avoid that is to just block off the walk mesh, which I will do this way. Now when I am streaming, at least currently because I'm using a laptop and I don't have a second monitor set up, I'm checking any questions from time to time that are coming up on our official Discord. I know Twitch also has that chat function, but I missed some messages that came through when I was doing a stream earlier there because I haven't got that open. It's in a tab down here. I'd have to have a quick look. I can see there's just one viewer currently, so, and they're not asking any questions. So the main purpose of using Twitch is to be able to save the videos. Now, you know, this is a wind-up. I'm just opening the properties of one placeable, and it took so long to open the properties. As I say, since Beamdog made the enhanced edition, there is this sort of running joke in the community. When something is broken, we say, hey, look at how enhanced this is, you know, or, you know, this sort of comedic reference to what happened to you, you know, what happened during that crash. Well, I got enhanced, you know, which has become a sort of byword for crashing. But that's not fair on them. They've made tremendous improvements to the game and to the tool set. But, you know, it's very hard to change something without having some knock-on effect elsewhere. And this is something that I've noticed, you know, now when I open properties on an object, the tool set can sometimes really hang. You know, this used to be instant. Okay, this is unusual now. I don't know why that has taken so long, but and now it is kind of stuck. Okay, this is annoying. But finally got it to appear. Not wild about having to share my entire desktop. You know, you always get these people giving a sort of narration of why you're using this program or what a mess that is. But as I say, sharing just the Neverwinter, streaming just the toolset causes the toolset to crash. So there is another bug. What I always say with bugs when you discover them is they won't get fixed unless you report them. And I'm kind of guilty of not reporting them myself. I've reported a lot in the past, but you know, I kind of feel like I'm spamming their bug report channels. But what's happening now is weird. This toolset not responding just because I opened the properties on one small placeable. I will be. Thankfully, I have a hotline to the developer that works on the toolset a lot. I'll probably be complaining about this at some stage in the relatively near future. There's no reason why this would hang so much, but maybe it's because this area has been recovered or whatever. I don't want to lose work even though I've only just started work again a few moments ago. Just because after losing work earlier that's just going to be depressing, so maybe after I save it will be more cooperative. I'm currently working on the Underdark server. It's not the largest of our servers, so it's just a bit faster than others, but it can still take a while. And it's another odd feature I've noticed that sometimes it will save very quickly, sometimes it will save very slowly. If I'm having problems with the toolset as I was then the saving process can take an absolute age. So let's see how long that takes. This has got to be the dullest video ever though now. We're going to be watching that for 20 minutes. The save progress should no way be that slow. This is a pretty classic example of the toolset acting up. So we were doing these streams yesterday as pretty much a test so I could see how well it would function. And we had quite a few viewers and certainly a lot of questions. This time it seems those early enthusiasts have lost their patience. Just checking online, there's not much activity for this stream. I likely scared people away last time. But certainly this is a reason not to watch. I mean, bloody hell. This should have saved already. It shouldn't be hanging just while it's trying to save. I might need to pause the stream and relaunch the tool set, but first I'm going to see if it wants to work. So, okay, I'm going to pause the stream. I'll be back. I'll stay on the voice channel. I just need to tinker with it a bit, and hopefully it'll be back soon. On Twitch, I won't pause the stream. I will just click on this "Be Right Back" button, so you get this awful graphic. There is a option where I can customize it. We have all this wonderful art for Arelith, but you know, there comes a time when you just can't be bothered. So, okay, technical difficulties. We will be back. This is a problem with the tool set, and that's my phone, so I need to mute as well. would be if Neverwinter Nights would launch. Okay, I'm going to have to pause the stream once again because Neverwinter Nights doesn't seem to want to be launching. I'm wondering now whether this is a Steam problem. I don't want to blame Dog too swiftly. I kind of miss the days of using the Beamdog client. Steam is just so annoying. Almost every time I launch it, it's wanting to install an update. I just had to Control-Alt-Delete my way out of it, and now it's wanting to install another update, so I'm going to mute again for the time being. That was a long delay. I'm sorry. I found the root of the problem. It was my antivirus software had decided to kick in and update and scan, and on this laptop that just often causes a problem that it slows everything else down. If you hear a very small voice, it's because I'm joined by my 3-year-old daughter who is drawing on the floor next to me. She has no interest in playing with her brothers and sisters. And so she is going to be there for the duration of this. Okay, so as I was saying earlier, I was doing a stream earlier today, and I didn't save. And so now I'm having to repeat a lot of that work. You know, I tell everyone that you have to save all the time when working on Neverwinter Nights, and sometimes I just don't do it. It's just easy to forget, you know. You kind of presume that it will work, forgetting that the world is not that kind. So this is a Formian Dungeon. I dropped a link to details of the creatures. In this case, when using this tile set, I'm going to avoid using doorways because some of the creature models are resized. They can be quite large. The doorways on Neverwinter Nights are quite small, and so you have to be pretty careful, otherwise you end up with creatures that can't move around their own home. So here I'm just going to use corridors and no doors. They're a lawful race with origins on these orderly planes of existence, so because of that I'm going to make their actual citadel somewhat symmetrical, quite ordered. This is a really large dungeon I've been working on. The stream is being saved on Twitch, so I'm not going to repeat stuff I've already said. This video will be available afterwards, so you can scroll back and look. If you have questions, ask them in Development General on the Arelith Discord or on the Twitch chat. The Arelith Discord I have open in a separate on my handheld device, so I'll be checking that quite often there. The Twitch chat I'll be checking less often. So I'm basically remaking an area I put together earlier from memory. Just doing the rough layout at this stage. So let's think about this. What did I have? This is the Barracks, the next rank up in their caste system that protecting the Mayan marchers, and the queens are the soldier caste of Formians. This is where they're going to be, so you know, if you try and enter into their citadel, you're going to end up facing off against them. I'm going to give, in this case, it's not a straightforward gauntlet. Player characters will have a choice of 2 symmetrical routes to get further in. The star set's quite nice. It has these high ceiling rooms as well as the low ceiling rooms. Not entirely perfect for Formians, but you know, when working with Neverwinter Nights you have to make sacrifices, particularly early on in the lifetime of the game. There were very few. You see, I haven't made it symmetrical, have I? This should have been longer here. Okay. Yeah, early on in the existence of Neverwinter Nights, you had very few tile sets and had to create all of this variety with really limited resources, and you know, it can get pretty jarring at times. You know, even when I was working on Tyrants of the Moonsea, they were using a brick interior for the inside of a caravan. Now, if you check on our patrons will know that I've commissioned a professional to actually fix that, and we have these actual caravan interiors that match the exteriors of the caravans. It's what I've referred to, it's been a project of mine for some time, the missing interior tile set. Now for this, I am actually using the professional services of a developer that has worked for Beamdog and for Ossian. This is the only project that's not done by some of our volunteers. And the missing interior tile set, for those that are interested, is going to be a tile set that fills in interiors for all those buildings where Neverwinter Nights included an exterior but not an interior. Now there's quite a few of these. The most notable ones are the caravans, the tree houses, and many of the Underdark buildings. You have these wonderful Underdark exteriors, but they don't have a matching interior, and you have to kind of work around it. So if you play an Andanor on Arelith, you will be used to seeing that that when you enter the hub or wherever, it doesn't match up very nicely. So the new tile set, and it's looking great so far, I just keep getting updated with it. This isn't unlike these tile sets, which uses whole new textures, and of course they're lovely. These use the textures to match the exterior of the building. It is my aim that it will look like an official expansion to Neverwinter Nights. It will look like it was always intended to be there. It's not something I could make myself. I could just direct what I want to be made. So yeah, I have retained the services of a professional to do that, who's been working on it on and off for more than the last year. When it's complete, I will be using it extensively on Arelith, but also putting it on the Neverwinter Nights Vault for all other servers or players to use. I'm pretty excited by it, I must admit. So that's one of the projects I have underway. The load screen project was the other one. Thankfully that finished not long ago. We're still adding new load screens, but we have these full screen load areas, which are full screen load paintings that are exclusive to ourselves, many of them, commissioned from an artist that is also a keen player who works on many different professional projects as well. So I'm happy we finally have that realised. Of course, it's often easy to get too ambitious. So, okay, what I'm going to do now here is just have an optional secondary route for players to take if they just want to do a bit of extra exploring. And yeah, apologies if you're watching the stream earlier and you're just seeing me do what is effectively the same thing again. I didn't save, I lost the work, and I have to basically approximate it from memory, which just is embarrassing. I had the same experience when working on Invisible Walls the other day. I was doing something really dumb, and normally I'm doing something extremely dumb without an audience, so I don't particularly need to worry about it, but I didn't really consider that when I thought about streaming the tool set, is what an ass I'm going to make of myself in front of other people. But there we are, I just have to live with that, destroy the mystique. So, alright, this is just going to be an optional route with a few rooms. I'm going to have to mute because I've got a small child climbing up on me and I'm not sure she fully understands that if she starts talking to me she'll have an audience. Probably hear her whispering there. So I'm going to mute for a few minutes, but I'll keep working. Now unmuted on both channels again. You know, it's kind of tricky. I don't want to expose children to, even if it's just their voices, to the online world, but at the same time, I've always got these small children around me. It's a great deal of fun, but also can take up a lot of time. So this is going to be the transition to the next area here. Now I'm going to dress this area later, but this is the general layout of the barracks. As I say, I've tried to make it, of the sort of military area, I've tried to make it quite symmetrical. And, you know, just a place for characters to go through and explore. But my 3-year-old decided once again she doesn't want to be with her brother and sisters and would rather be here with me. She finds this quite funny. Okay, I won't mute straight away unless she really wants to talk to me, I'm sure. If we just hear singing in the background, it's probably not the worst thing in the world. Unless you despise children, which is your right. So, yeah, I'm going to come back and dress this area later. What I generally do is I do that layout for the entire dungeon, then I go through and dress each area, then I go through and light each area, and then finally add any pieces of writing, secret features. Normally I would then do the creatures, but most of these creatures are already made. Sorry, I have to mute again. And unmuted again. I'm sorry, this is just going to be a constant feature if anyone's watching me work, that I keep having to mute and unmute. Okay, so I saved again, so hopefully I won't lose that work. As I say, all the lighting and stuff is going to come later. This is the last area I was working on. The next area that I tend to be much larger with lots of different routes. But all the work was lost. This actually, I was saying earlier, this is a really nice tile set. This is called the Classic Dungeon. It's another hack one that we've added to Arelith, and it's really nice. May well crash. There tends to be always be more crashing issues when working on hack content. God, you know, the first time I did this yesterday, I was joined by a couple of other developers, and so it was a lot more conversational. I apologise that this is far from being that, because frankly this is a lot less entertaining just listening to me. I will turn the microphone off from time to time just to quietly work, and pretty much only respond to questions. So I mentioned earlier that I was going to show how to create doors where the tile set doesn't allow for them. So I'll be doing that just shortly. This tool set has a great opportunity to do them, actually. Presents a great opportunity, rather. I really like the curved walls you can get here. I'd like to mention the maker of each of these tile sets, but I'd have to check the vault beforehand. But this is called Classic Dungeon. You can see it there and download it. It is a really nice one, no question. Okay, it's a nice heart shape. So okay, you see here there's this alcove. Alcove presents a good opportunity to turn it into a doorway, and I'm going to go through how I do that. Now, doors normally, when you select them here, they will only go into door slots. You can't just place them down. You can see the door spinning. It's looking for a door slot. There's nowhere for it to go. You can't make a door the ordinary way there. So this is how you do it if you want to put a door somewhere else. So I put a doorway there. That's just so I've got somewhere to place the door down. So it doesn't matter which door we do. We're going to be reskinning it later. So put that down. Now we have a wooden door. Now with placeables, you can relocate them by dragging them around or right-clicking and choosing adjust location. Here's a brazier, look, I can just move it around, or I can adjust its location along the various axes by right-clicking on it. Doors, on the other hand, that doesn't allow for. I can drag it around, but only while it looks for another slot to go in. You can't just put it down anyway, so it will jump back to where it's originally been. And if I right-click on it, there is no adjust location. But on the left-hand menu, if I right-click on it, suddenly we have adjust location, and we can change the location of the door. So we're going to want to change the location of the door to be in front of this alcove. But we've got another problem here, and that's the brick wall behind it. Even if I put a door there, even if I change the door to be something that fits, anyone that's opening it is just going to see a brick wall, and we don't want that. So let's create the illusion of a doorway. The way I invariably do this is by using... There's another... We do actually have a custom placeable I can use for this, but I'm going to stick with the standard placeables here in case someone's obviously not using the same hacks as we are. So, okay, this is a standard doorway, and it is, keep in mind, I'm in the placeable menu here, not the door menu. Placeables are these static objects, you know, barrels, cages, carcasses. In the miscellaneous tab, you also have this metal doorway. By default, it's not usable, it's just a decoration, and even if it is usable, it doesn't, unless you're adding a script to it, it doesn't create a door transition. So what I'm going to do, I'm not going to make it usable, but I want to change its initial state, and I can't do that while it's static. So you noticed I opened the properties then, but I didn't see it. I had to go down and click on the toolset in the taskbar for it to pop up. That is just another one of these little things that you see in the enhanced edition toolset that didn't used to be the case. So I'm untoggling static. I'm going to make it plot because I don't want characters to destroy it, which can easily happen when they're using ranged spells and things, you know, unless you want something to be exploded by trigger happy player characters, make them plot or give them huge amounts of hit points. Okay, so now I've opened it. Now you can see here that the open door creates this black void, which is exactly what I need up here. So let's get the angle of it right, which is obviously going to be 225. Now I want to push it far enough into that alcove that it's resting just in front of that wall. Now in this case it's going to jump above it. Now there is a great feature that was recently added to the tool set, which really is invaluable, and that is here, environment render AABB nodes. This basically shows you where the walk mesh is. We'll come back to that later because we need to make sure any door we put down is within the walk mesh, that it's accessible. And some of these hack tile sets, many of them have problematic walk meshes. You can see sections of floor, like here you can see I'm trying to click on this door but I can't click on it. The reason I can't click on it is because it's outside of the walk mesh. So if I do that again, you can see, yeah, it's outside of the walk mesh there. So I'm going to have to do it in this menu, Placeable's doorway, and I'm going to want to make it bigger anyway. I can click on it up here. Just need to get it properly aligned, really. You know, you could do stuff like this by the numbers if you're in a mathematical frame of mind, or you can just push it around until it looks like it's in the right place. So that seems pretty good, but it's still too far forward. So let's move it back. Alright, so that's pretty good. See, now we have this illusion. We can still see a bit of brick wall here on that one side, so we're going to need to... You know, I actually think that's because of the angle. Maybe it's not. Okay, so I'm going to need to pull that over a bit. It's going to jump up because I've got it above the walk mesh, but I can just put it down, not to 0, because if you see there's that little step around the edge of the room, that little ledge. Need to be at 0.2. Now you can see the top of the door sticking up above the black void here. We don't want that. Players are going to be able to see that, and it's going to look bad. So we're going to need to drop the Z-axis on this door just a little bit more. Right, so there we are. Look at that. That looks like it's a transition that leads somewhere, which is what we were after. Now this is just going to be what appears behind. It's just going to be what appears behind the door when we open it. Now we want to move the door there. For this, I'm going to actually use another one of these doors just to get the location right. Now I need to make sure this time it stays within the walk mesh. If I put it outside of the walk mesh, the players won't be able to click on the door. So it needs to stay within this grey area here. So basically that's about as far as it can go. Let's turn that off. You can see here, that's what I mean about how there can be a problem with some of these tile sets in the walk mesh. That is absolutely as far as I can put it. Not even sure then that characters would even be able to click on it. And you can see it's quite a long way in front of the alcove. But if I can click on it in the tool set easily, then players can access it easily. That seems pretty perfectly aligned. Again, I'm just doing this by eye. We want that to be level with the center. I guess it is. It looks to me like it could just be a tiny bit to one side, but maybe I'm wrong. Is that better? I don't know. Okay, so now I need its coordinates. I'll copy the first one, 175.63, 43.75, and the other ones I will memorize. So let's go back to this door we put down earlier. And we can use the right button to adjust its location. 43.75, 0.2, and then 45. Alright, so now we've got a door that people can click on and open over this alcove. Obviously the door's the wrong shape, so I'm going to open the properties and change it to a gate. It's easy to download lots of new doors from the Neverwinter Night file. I'm going to be using one of the ones we've got from there. These aren't actuals. A lot of these are doors that people have made. In this case, I'm not going to use one that people have made, just one that's been extracted from elsewhere in Neverwinter Nights to use in this kind of location. I think the warehouse door seems about the right size. So there we go. I can enlarge it a bit. Right, so there we are. Now, unfortunately, because of the limits of the tile set, we have this problem here. This door is standing too far from the wall. Characters won't notice that unless they get too close to it, but still I don't like it. So the best thing to do here is to just find a pillar that fits. Just to close it off a bit. I can't move the door any further back because of the problematic walk mesh. I used this tile set when making the new tower in the Andanor port, which is a fantastic guild, but I discovered then that there are all these sort of walk mesh issues where the walk mesh can sometimes stop quite a long way from the wall. So let's try and find a pillar that fits. I don't think many of these will, to be honest, given how this tile set looks. And this is the Underdark. We do not want to have... We don't want to have too much wood. There's already some on that door. That looks really rubbish. It's the spike that stops it from looking good. post in there, that might make it just fit to the Underdark. Something I'll probably do quite a lot when making this area is use Underdark placeables. Just stops it from being too jarring, can remind the players that they are still below ground. So I just basically want to block off that gap a little bit. It's a bit of a problem because it's slightly too large. Thankfully Beamdog introduced a feature that can help with that, so I'll deal with that in just a moment. Maybe actually that's better rather than it being flat actually. Just keep it at that 45-degree angle. I think that looks better than having it being totally flat. You don't have to do all of this, you can just use the doors where they are, but one common problem with Neverwinter Nights, certainly for me, is that there are far too many small doors and not enough large gates. You know, the game's called Dungeons and Dragons, and in the dungeon tile set there are no doors big enough for a dragon to pass through. In fact, there are few doors big enough for a giant to pass through. There are all these tiny doors and giant monsters. It just seems a pretty obvious creative oversight. So, okay, I just don't want this pillar there clipping with the ceiling, so I just want to drop down its size just a tad. Is that still clipping? I think that's alright. So just see what scale we've made that. Yeah, we've already dropped it by 5%, that's fine. Do the same with the other one. Now, like I said before, you can't adjust some settings if the object is static, so the first thing I need to do if I want to adjust its size is stop it from being static. Just by unchecking that box. So here we go. There is a doorway. You know, it's pretty lackluster right now, but as I say, this is going to be a really large area, the centre of the Formian citadel where the Mayan marches are. These intelligent creatures. Oh, one thing, I just need to erase that doorway I put down earlier, just to help me put that gate in. And now I need to decide what kind of layout I want for this place. Well, I like the symmetry, and I quite like this heart, so I'm going to put hearts in at all four corners. I decided earlier that I wanted players when they get here to need to get 2 keys from Grand Viziers, or whatever the title is, of the Mayan marches below the Queen. And there'll be 2 of them, and they will both have a key to the Queen's chamber, and they'll have to go to both of their lairs and defeat them both to get the keys before they can get to the Queen. These creatures are all about protecting their Queen. Getting to the Queen should be hard. And, you know, if I make it hard getting to the Queen, if there are a lot of areas to get through, then I can put some pretty tasty loot in the final area. I'm not sure if one of our runic chests would work here. We'll see. So I'm just pasting that into every corner. I'll still have to do that whole door thing you just watched me do again in every instance, which isn't going to be fun, but should be a bit quicker now. I've done it once and decided what model to use. So there we go. A nice bit of symmetry there. And every one of these doors, oh, it did paste the door. That's really good. I swear it didn't used to. Just have to put down these pillars again, but know what? That is easy. Just quickly check the different channels, see if anyone is there asking me a question. We have one viewer on Twitch. Not really expecting any there. As I say, I've just got it there to be so the video is recorded. Oh, quite a few there on the Discord. I'll check my phone to see if any of you have questions. Whether you're just watching in silence. Alright, so, oh boy, dev stream, yeah, probably sounds a better idea than it is. So what's the hardest part of area design for me? The tedium, you know. Again, I warned on the forums there's going to be bad language, so let me be clear, that's going to be the case. The fucking tedium is unbearable. You're being creative, sure, but then you have to repeat a process so many times, sometimes dozens of times, sometimes hundreds of times, and that's awful. It it's absolutely draining. It's like glorified data entry. There's been times in the past where I've had to go through every area on every module and make an adjustment because we've introduced a new feature and it's needed a new variable. So look, this is the Underdark. All of these areas. Trying to load them all up individually, go into every one, make a change, save it, export the area, and to do that across all the servers. The most recent time I had to do that was with the load screen, but thankfully I had some people to help. So yeah, I mean the hardest part of area design is the little things. You know, the detail matters. It matters to players. They're gonna see the quality. They're gonna feel it. But it can be tempting to take shortcuts. So yeah, that's the answer to that question. Hardest part of area design is the tedious repetition. And then other than that, just seeing someone there not getting any audio. But it seems like that problem was on their end. So let me just put these pillars back in. You know, and I might ask for feedback when making some of these areas. I certainly was yesterday. I needed a one-liner for a rare spawn and was getting some suggestions while I did it. So chance might crop up to make your mark on the server. If you are watching what I'm doing and you think, you know, I don't think that works, or, you know, maybe consider this, feel free to mention it. I'm not going to take offence. I don't have the time to take offence, frankly. Something I miss from playing a lot is there is this quite close community, you know, but when you're developing you end up far away from all of that. I find it hard remembering just who everyone is because I'm not in game, and I'm certainly not on the Discord just chatting with people, and most of the time sort of squirreled away doing this stuff. So it's when I've copy and pasted, again, this is just another piece of advice. You saw me adjust the size on these placeables. If you copy and paste them, it reverts to the original size. I don't want these pillars clipping with the ceiling, as I said. I can remember from last time I adjusted the size to the scale, sorry, to 0.95, so just doing that again. You know, Slipshod, are there? Yeah, I mean, and Beamdog have made some incredible improvements. The the one that comes to mind is when you. Sorry, if anyone's on Twitch, the question he just asked is tedium in development. Is there anything that functionality from the Aurora that would help relieve that? Well, when you copy and paste placeables, like, you know, drawing a box over some placeables, copying them over to a new area, until recently, until Beamdog adjusted it, that would put all of them back on 0 on the ground on their axis. So, oh, hang on, telephone call, I'll need to mute, but I will be back shortly. You missed a chance to hear me talk German then. But, there we are. Just quickly have a look at the Patreon channel. I was answering a question, wasn't I? Yeah, this functionality that they added, copying and pasting placeable groups. It used to put them all back on the ground, back on the flat on the floor. Now it doesn't. So let me give an example. I'm just going to take any two, put a cage and a campfire. Now I can copy this and paste it, and you can see the campfire is still on top of the cage. Now beforehand that used to be, both would be on 0 axis. The paste would look like that. Now often you're dealing with really complex large placeable groups, and being able to duplicate them and move them around very easily was a tremendous quality of life improvement. Is there anything else they could do that would make it all a lot quicker? Yeah, they could stop it from crashing. That is the number one issue. This stream will end when this toolset crashes, and I apologize and say I have to stop this stream to relaunch the toolset and try and salvage my work. That it isn't something that happens occasionally; it happens all the time. But it's not necessarily Beamdog's fault. We're using a lot of hack content. I'm currently using even a hack tile set. So, you know, it's not necessarily fair to get mad at them for that. And even before they added all these features, it would still crash. There are some things that bother me. I was saying earlier, the biggest thing that bothers me at the moment, well, two things. Give you an example of both. Just a second. So, first thing is, right click on something, select properties. Watch that wait. Still waiting. There we are. Finally come up. That should happen instantly. There is no reason that should take, 1 or 2 seconds before it opens. It may not sound very much, but if I have to go through 50 placeables and change the properties, I don't want it hanging. Sorry, Spire. His audio settings or mine? I think everyone else can hear me okay. Again, anyone on Twitch, I'm just responding to questions on the Arelith Discord right now. I guess Spire's talking to Norks. Okay, that's fine, party, thanks. The most rewarding thing about area design, Dothamaya, is having an audience. It's as simple as that. If you're doing anything creative, it doesn't matter if you're writing a book or producing a piece of music. What you want is for people to consume what you're doing. And on this server we have that, I make something and then I get to see people actually playing through it, people enjoying it. I feel really bad for anyone that is producing stuff just for it to go unplayed, and that is particularly pertinent with Neverwinter Nights, that has all these amazing developers producing all this amazing content for an ever decreasing audience. I was saying this on a previous stream that I was around when Neverwinter Nights first launched, admittedly far, far younger, but back then people were coming from Baldur's Gate. They were coming from Fallout and Icewind Dale and all of those games. Neverwinter Nights came out at the same time as Morrowind, which is same year. It's pretty interesting when you compare the two games, because frankly Morrowind looks so much better. You'd think if you just looked at the two games side by side that Neverwinter Nights was 5 years before the other. But it attracted a great many players. The ability to create your own modules, to create your own adventures was niche. It was only a tiny percentage of the overall player base were out there producing content. But the content producers stuck around and the players moved on to bigger, better things. And so Neverwinter Nights in 2021, you have so many developers. You can see it by going through the server list or going onto the Neverwinter Nights vault and see what people are creating, and very few people to actually play it. You know, on Arlith or Arelith or Aelith, I honestly do not know, and I know I really should. We're really lucky. We have this big community and this big audience. We make something and there's people there playing it. Now, I'm not going to say that's because we're doing anything better. I think it's just been a number of fortunate circumstances over the years, and certainly, efforts to promote the server that have been a large part of my life, that we're lucky enough, to have this audience. And if you're doing something creative, that's what you want. I'd rather have someone raging on the forums about how shit something I've made is than have nobody look at it at all. And we've got all these players. So the most rewarding thing about making area design is watching people enjoy the end result. It's a bit of a cheesy answer, I know. I guess the actual process of being here and making them, it's fun seeing it all come together. It can feel pretty frustrating at this stage where you're just sketching something out and then, 2 or 3 weeks later you're looking at a finished product that is pretty neat. So, alright. Always got to think, when players come into areas like this, they're going to be running as fast as they can to get to wherever the next loot chest is. Most of them are going to be ignoring their environment. The area layout should slow them down without pissing them off too heavily. So let's decide how we want to have this. One thing you might notice I'm doing here is using a lot of diagonals. You can see I've set this diagonal corridor up artificially, and putting a door in a diagonal. That's because Neverwinter Nights is based on this grid. Everything is in squares, and if you can disguise that with placeable work, with clever door placement, all the better. It's the grid's quite nice because it does make it feel like tabletop, but at the same time, curved lines, uneven surfaces, that can be a good thing. So that little couple of tiles there is going to be the other side of the other side. Now I want to select a group of tiles there. Noticed I navigated away from the tile back to it, because otherwise it would start placing down groups again. But if I go back to it, then it goes back to tile selection. I just want to select these tiles I just made. Again, just because I am a bit lazy and I want to have that all symmetrical. Probably should have made this area larger. I'm not leaving myself a great deal of space. Alright, so that'll be the other side of those doors, and now I'm just really going to want corridors and rooms. Now, this is where I have to troll players a bit. I don't want them to be able to walk straight into the centre, turn the corner, run to the next area. We need to make them take the long way, because otherwise the dungeon's going to be too easy, or more importantly, over too quickly. So and again, if you're new to doing area development, don't just necessarily do what I'm doing here. Just deciding on the layout on the fly as you're drawing the area. Plan it out on a piece of paper. Get some stuff written down before you start doing this, otherwise you'll just end up in a rabbit hole of endlessly drawing and redrawing areas. I've really made hundreds of dungeons over the years, so I can afford to be lazy and still get a relatively decent end product. I mean, dungeons can live or die based upon their layout, but the more important factor is the actual creatures. You can make a dungeon as atmospheric as you like, but if you get the creatures wrong, if they're too challenging or, well, actually I was going to say too easy, but no, if they were too easy, people would just come in here in their droves for the easy experience points. No, just if they're too challenging, people won't come to the dungeon. It's the good thing about the writs, and was kind of why I devised the idea of having these quests in the first place, was, you know, we couldn't balance all the dungeons to have the same level of difficulty. That wouldn't be fun for the players, and it just wouldn't make for interesting content. Equally with rewards, you know, some creatures obviously are not going to offer the same amount of treasures as others. If you're going and fighting constructs, whatever, you're not going to get the same amount of treasure from fighting a civilized race. So the system was originally devised to overcome that in two ways. One, by the experience points gain. If you have two dungeons for a level 12 character, one is very easy, one is very hard, then the associated writ, the associated quest with the very hard one, should offer a really big experience point reward. The one that's very easy doesn't need a large experience point reward. Um, Equally, if one offers great material benefits and one doesn't, well, give the one that doesn't a really big gold reward. This way you're evening out the rewards without making the content just, you know, monotonous, because players naturally will gravitate to whatever area they think is going to offer them the easiest reward. You know, one area I loved making on Arelith was the Orc lands, and I didn't realise when I made it that I just made a perfect grinding gauntlet. It was circular. It was, you know, just easy to just endlessly run around getting that experience points and just repeating the same dungeons over and over again. And people go there to the exclusion of all other dungeons, and they still do. You know, it's still a problematic area in that regard. But there's another reason for that, which I can go into later if anyone asks me to. Yeah, constructs giving crafting materials, that is actually quite new. They didn't used to, and there are still some creatures that don't give any. I kind of like construct dungeons. I added a new one to Cawdor quite recently as a starter construct dungeon. I don't know if any of you played through that. It's quite short, but you know, we have these favoured enemies. If you build a character that is obsessed with constructs and wants to go and fight them, you often have to wait to a really high level. I realised there was not really any good low level construct content, so I created that new little dungeon for Cawdor because of that. Um, Also, there's no moral ambiguity in murdering constructs, which is nice. Okay, that's not symmetrical. Not paying attention. By no means do areas need to be symmetrical. I'm really just doing it here to reflect the lawful nature of these creatures. Not because it's also kind of easier. Okay, so is that right? I think it is. Okay, it's not. You see, this is the problem with streaming. It's embarrassing to see myself make such obvious mistakes that, you know, a small child should be able to work their way around. Just having to draw a symmetrical shape and I'm failing to do so. But alright, I think that works. Unfortunately it looks a bit like the German cross, but overcome that by adding rooms. I think that's actually pretty pretty. So I'm going to save it again and pour a cup of tea because I don't want to lose work. Yeah, I don't want weird notifications coming through. As I said earlier, if anyone is recently joined, Discord does offer the ability to just stream a program, in this case the Neverwinter Nights toolset, but it causes it to crash. So this is why I'm streaming my entire desktop. I'll just quickly check Twitch. I doubt there are any viewers there asking questions, but there were some earlier, so no, there's still this one silent viewer. So no questions coming through there. Okay, so now we're just going to want rooms. As I say, I'm going to decorate these rooms later. So let's look at what we've got here. Pits, platforms. I don't think... I'm not sure if we're going to want any pits. I guess we could have a central pit. Let's see. The queen might be in a pit. What I'd really want is a big stairwell in the middle. Yeah, I copied a lot of the area tiles here, and I could have reversed it, but I didn't have this sketched out first. I was kind of doing it as I go. So you know, I would have done it an easier way if I'd drawn it out by hand first. But I'm improvising in this case. So that was just answering a question about why I didn't copy and paste more of the area tiles. Okay, the Twitch channel, my Twitch name, again, this is just someone asking on Discord, is Lord Irongron, all one word. I've made that account ages ago because Beamdog asked me to participate in their Twitch streams. Early in Neverwinter Nights they were doing this like weekly programming, and they said they wanted me on as a guest, and then I made my account and they had a technical issue and I never was. By the time that the time rolled round, next time they wanted to ask me, I suggested they speak to Grumpy instead, and she did an excellent job. We do have an official Twitch channel which Spire manages, and I will be streaming there eventually. But for now, I'm just doing it on my own account. So, oh, 2 viewers on Twitch now. It's the big time. I'll soon be moving on from Arelith to pursue my media career. I think my voice had lent itself perfectly to snooker commentary. So, alright. So I'm just going to put down some rooms. I'm going to be dressing these areas later. So, you're not really going to see much here. I'm not going into any real detail. It's just the way I prefer to make dungeons when I'm working this way, is decide roughly how I want them to look and get all the areas made, and then go through and start dressing them all. When I'm dressing them all is, putting the placeables down, and that's going to take a really long time. And sort of hidden features and the like. So in the centre, we're going to want the door to the Queen's area. Now, characters are coming in from one corner. and I'm making them. If you see, they're coming in from here. I want to make them walk around a bit. Otherwise, they'll just run to the other side, and they'll be through that level of the dungeon in a moment. This is the logic behind this this particular shape that I'm using. I don't want characters to easily be able to run from one end to the other, because anyone that's played regularly on the server will know that that's what happens. You know, I made some really big dungeons recently, and I was kind of shocked to see the speed at which some characters would go through them. Okay, that is going to need a floor. Okay, so now we have the Alright, so let me just go back to the old area, show where the characters are entering. They're entering here. So that is the northwest corner. So here they're coming in the southeast. The Queen's area, I guess I'm actually going to have here, and here and here the two what are they called? Mitramars. Those formings just below the Queen. There'll be two minor boss areas that'll each have a key to get through this door, and another door, another gate I will add in here. And then I'm going to have a large central room with a pit, I think, and that pit will be full with bodies of various Underdark races. The Formians, while not evil, are certainly quite alien. Don't particularly have empathy for creatures on the prime material plane, and they require a great deal of sustenance. On their own plane of existence, they have that effectively an infinite supply. Here they don't, so if they're not subjugating people with their psionic abilities and turning them into slaves, then they're going to be using them for protein. And that's where this area is going to come into play. I'm just going to have a pit here, and I am going to fill it with bodies of Drow and Duergar and Sverfneblin. Okay, that pit's too large. Need there to be room for creatures to spawn. That'll do. That's still actually really large. I can fill that pit with bodies. Probably put some rare spawn in here, in there, some sort of carrion eater. So this is effectively their larder, and these other rooms will just be kind of, yeah, individually decorated. I'll just add the doors in for each of them. You know, I can't promise that these streams are always going to be entertaining. A lot of work can be quite tedious. You should be able to see why I really like this tile set. It's quite refreshing to see so many curves. Okay, I'm being joined by my 3-year-old daughter again, so I'm going to just keep working while muted for a little while. I'll turn it on again when and she's and it seems to be going again. Okay, I'm not sure here. Okay, I'll mute myself for a short while. I'm just going to quickly finish drawing up these rooms, so you'll still be able to watch. You just won't be able to hear me. Okay, I'm back for a little while. Might be quite noisy because my youngest has decided it's quite a lot of fun to keep running into the room and screaming at me. So just gonna look over some of these messages in the development thing. So party in the apartment thinks dev streams are cool even if they seem boring. Um, yeah, I mean, if you watch enough of them, you'll learn a fair bit. But you have to always obviously ask yourself if it's knowledge you necessarily want to have. There are many more modern engines out there for creating games. I really like the Aurora engine, but I only learned it because I love Neverwinter Nights. If you really want to invest time in learning how to do game development, then really, unless you're wanting to build for Neverwinter Nights, I'd probably advise not doing so on a 20-year-old engine. I should probably sell it more than that, but there it is. But what it is nice is what is nice is the sort of the blocky element of it. It's quite retro and it fits the tabletop quite nicely. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. Again, as I said earlier, you'll notice I'm using corridors here rather than doors just because the doorways are going to be too small for some of the creatures here. With the corridors, it's a much bigger opening, which you can see there. And if you've got parties of adventurers running around all trying to squeeze through a little door, it can just be annoying, whether or not the creatures are large. So I'm using corridors, and I will artificially put doors over them a bit later on in this build process. For now, I'm just getting the area shape down. I was saying earlier how much I appreciate this tile set. I'm going to say something negative about it, even so, which I'll do in just a moment. It has a similar problem that quite a few tile sets have currently that are out there. I'll explain what it is in just a moment. So, as I said earlier, with tile sets like this, you need to dress them with placeables extensively to give them character, because you can see there are no groups here. The default Aurora tile sets, they have groups you can put down. It might be slave huts or buildings or weird little platforms or whatever. They have them there. They're set things in place. This doesn't have that. A lot of them don't have that. Now that is not necessarily a problem, were it not for one significant drawback. Just do this last little room here, and then I will show you what it is. The classic dungeon and the versatile dungeon, I believe, both have this problem. So let's look at a room. Doesn't matter which room it is, they've all got it. So take a look. You can see around the edge of the room there is this step up. The floor is not even around the entire room. Now that is a pretty big problem if you're wanting to get creative in the layout of a room, because I can't put placeables over both. That's really limiting. I can't put fences down because they're on different levels. So you can't get awfully creative, even if you're wanting to make a bedroom, you know. You can't put a bed against a wall because part of it's sticking out over this ledge. It really limits how creative you can get in doing something different with the rooms. And those ledges are all around. I mean, look, they're everywhere, absolutely everywhere. We've not got them in corridors, to be fair, but they're everywhere else. And it limits how much dressing you can do on the area. So yeah, that's kind of a pain. So, okay. Now we need to repeat this door thing. I'd have been thinking about it, I'd have done it before I pasted these tiles, but I didn't, so never mind. Okay, the scale is 2.08. Copy the door that's there. Get it into place. So again, I'm repeating the process I was doing earlier that allows you to put doors where the tool set doesn't have any. There is an issue with doing it this way. The doors can be quite difficult to access with WASD, and as a result they can be difficult to access for console users. It's really, you're really wanting to be pointing and click to get through doors that look like this, and on some of the platforms we've supported that's not an option. I mean, you know, it is an option, it's just more of a time consuming one. So that's the only word of concern I would give for that. What did I say that was? 2.08. Interesting, that's not an exact angle. Alright, there we are, that looks good. Drop that by another 1. Oops, that wasn't by 1. No. That's -1 would be okay. Yeah, good. I'll add the other ones of these in that I need to add. Good. And number 3. Great, and then the last one. Unfortunately, I now have to do all those doors, which is going to be more time consuming. The last time I copy and pasted the tile, it copied the door with it, and it never used to do that pre-enhanced edition, so I should have done that before. Might see if that works again. Set up one door and then see if I can just copy and paste the tiles to get the other doors in, because it takes a while relocating doors in that way. So okay, as I said before, you need to first create a doorway where you can place a door and then move it in front of the one where you want it to go. So in this case I get it in the location that I want. This door I'm putting down isn't the one that I actually use, it's just so I can get the coordinates of where I want the actual door. Just have to check that, make sure it's still on the grid. It's only just on the grid there. I'm not sure characters will be able to click on that. Probably need to move it slightly further out. Basically that here in environment render AABB nodes basically shows you where the walk mesh is. And it's a shortcoming of this tile set and some others that the walk mesh doesn't extend right up into the walls. So that's why I was using those pillars earlier. So okay, that's basically where I want the door. 56.26. Oops, sorry, I want to be looking at this one. Yeah, 56.26. If you want to adjust the location of a door, you have to do it in the left-hand menu. Okay, so now I have the door in place where I want it to be, and then I'm going to change its model to the warehouse door. And this warehouse door isn't in the default engine, or at least it's not in it as a selectable door, but you can easily download these door packs from the Neverwinter Night Vault. Just follow the instructions, as you often have to do some other entries, 2DAs or whatever, when adding them in. These are all the doors we currently have available on our server. None of the doors I think we've made ourselves. I think all of them are, all of the ones we're currently using are from the community. Actually, that is quite far out from the wall. That's why I was having to use those pillars. But anyway, let's see if copying these tiles is going to copy the door. That's going to save me a bit of time. And it won't overwrite that placeable, so let's just see. Fantastic. There's the door in place. Yeah, this definitely didn't used to be the case. Copying and pasting tiles would not copy and paste doors. Now it seems to be, so another big improvement. I said it before, we're so lucky to have, you know, studio support for this game. I'm not sure how much longer it will last. because, as I was saying earlier, there just are not many players for Neverwinter Nights, but a huge amount of content producers. I could only see it really being a viable source of revenue for a studio if there were plenty of players, and there aren't. And most of the updates I see being made to Neverwinter Nights are more tools for developers. But many of them are making this amazing content that's rarely going to be seen or played. And there is definitely a tragedy there because Neverwinter Nights is an amazing game. And I think the fact that after all these years we still have 2,000 regular players on our server alone is testament to just what an amazing game Neverwinter Nights is. Because you could look at some big game titles, big releases, and a few years after their release, they're lucky to be pulling in 200 players at any given time on the Steam charts or whatever. And so the fact that something as small as Arelith, regularly goes above 200 on a busy night, that's that's really something. I spent some time playing Elite Dangerous because I don't know, I might even like sci-fi more than fantasy, and I kind of like what they were trying to achieve with that game, and it looks incredibly slick. And you look at the numbers of the amount of people playing at any one time, and it's 10 or 20 times the number we have on Arlith, sometimes less. And that's kind of crazy because it's not that many more people. Yet it's supported by this really professional studio doing all these big releases. And here we are, a group of hobbyists, you know, getting pulling in, a respectable audience of players. And part of that is because there aren't really any other games out there that offer what Neverwinter Nights does, and I think part of that is because the origin of role-playing games was creating source books so people could create their own worlds. That was a feature of all those role-playing games. And after the initial games, I was too young for them myself, but those initial releases of Dungeons and Dragons in the 70s, it was followed by all these other role-playing games throughout the 80s and 90s. Dungeons and Dragons was eclipsed for a while. But now we live in the age of Critical Role, and Dungeons and Dragons is once more ascendant. A lot of other role-playing games have fallen by the wayside, and it's become just much more commercial, and it's moved away from source books and world building to people wanting to play official campaigns and emulate what they're seeing on Critical Role, which isn't bad, but that whole hobbyist world building, role playing games as they weren't about the money. They really weren't. I often talk about Rolemaster, but there are many other old role playing games. They were made by enthusiasts. No one was getting rich off them. But, you know, one really telling experience I had is I was in, I can't remember which country it was. Ireland, maybe? Denmark. I can't remember. I travelled around a fair bit. Anyway, there was a Games Workshop store, the company behind Warhammer. Now, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay is just, I think, one of the best role-playing games that was ever made. The art is incredible, and the setting is wonderful. It really is. So I thought, I wonder what that game's like now, the latest edition. Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. So I walk into the Games Workshop shop. Now this is the shop that, you know, literally the name of the shop is the people that own Warhammer. I say to the guy there, do you have Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay? He says, oh no, we don't sell it. How on earth can you not sell it when you're the Games Workshop store? No, you have to go to a bookshop to get that. Maybe try here or here. And for a moment I thought, why on earth are they not selling the role-playing game? And Then I looked around, and of course they're not selling the role-playing game. They want to sell all these endless figures. You know, Warhammer Fantasy Battle is an absolute cash cow. They don't really want people wandering into the store and going away creating their own stuff. And I'm not sure even, I mean, I'm no expert on Wizards of the Coast and Dungeons and Dragons, but with the whole movie coming out and the sort of commercial aspect of it all, I'm not sure if source books are really the thing now, if they're more interested in selling campaigns than actually encouraging people to go out and create their own stuff. But they are supportive of groups that do that, even if they don't do it themselves. But yeah, Neverwinter Nights has got that. You know, it's obviously inspired by those old role-playing games. You know, buy this, and it's a digital source book is the way to look at it. It's like an old style role-playing game digital source book. Buy it and create your worlds. It goes totally against the commercially driven MMOs of the modern age. It was groundbreaking at the time, but the it went in another direction. The market, you know, in a way, Neverwinter Nights was misjudged because that's not the way that online fantasy worlds were going to go. You know, no studio in their right mind is going to create a game you only have to buy once for a relatively cheap price and then create your own servers. You know, you look at us, we were charging $10 a month with even with 2,000 regular players. We'd be raking in the cash, and it's not what we do. But studios look at stuff like that, and of course that's what they're thinking about. And you can't blame people when it's their business to make money from making money, but certainly as a player I always found Arelith and Neverwinter Nights more broadly quite refreshing because no one's trying to sell premium content, and yeah, no one's trying to make a quick buck. But okay, I've put those doors in. I haven't set up the transitions or anything, but they're all good. I'm going to use floor transitions on all of the others except the one that leads to the Queen, which will be over here, where I think I'm going to want like a pretty good gate. I think this tile set has got a ceiling, so I have to be pretty careful. I'm going to put a gate across here. So again, I'm repeating the same thing I was doing before. I'll check the messages in a minute, see if anyone has any questions. I just want to get this done first. I have to go relatively soon. Yeah, I can't neglect my children for too long. I'll do this first and then take any questions that anyone might have. So again, you see me do the same process. Put a door somewhere else, use a placeable to get the coordinates of the door I want to put in place. 204.89. I'm just saying that to myself so I don't forget the number. Sorry, you can probably hear my daughter in the background shouting at me. She's talking German to me because that's the country I live in. I'll just reply to her once. When I'm finished here. Okay. 5 Minuten. Vielleicht 10. Ja. Ja, gerne. response to us. I'm going to mute again for a minute. Okay, back again, possibly for not very long. Just got to see what I can. I want a gate there. I guess that's going to have to do. But see if there's any kind of fence I can put in. So this will be the entrance to the Queen's chamber. As I say, it can be a mistake to feel that the Formians are sort of uncivilized. They're really not. This is an advanced race. And the Underdark on Arelith, it has a lot of dungeons, but not many very large ones. Mostly it's full of small and medium-sized dungeons, and it's nice to add some in that are sizable. Alright, so that would be the entrance to the Queen's lair. Obviously it'll be black behind, and this room will be decorated, so just close off that one doorway there. So I still have to add in all of the transitions. I've got to do 2 new areas for the 2 sort of sub-bosses where the characters get the keys, and then decorate what in total is 4, 5, 6, 7 areas, and then the boss chamber, make and dress that, the 8th area. So if you keep watching the streams, you're going to be seeing me make this dungeon for quite some time yet. I'm not going to take as much time over it as I have on certain others. So I'm just going to check the message now. Okay, I'm muted. I'm not muted anymore though, am I? I unmuted myself. I muted myself earlier because I had to communicate with the children, and I don't think my 3-year-old fully realises that she has an audience when she talks to me in here. Zefi, regarding that question, you know, when Neverwinter Nights first came out, I was really quite young. I had these big ideas that I would be able to use it to create these worlds in the same way I was doing with pen and paper. I bought it just for the tool set. I opened it up. At first it was promising. Then I realized you need to be able to code. If you're making your own project, you need to be able to code. So go away, learn to code, then come back to the tool set. The advantage of working on a project like Arelith is you don't actually have to. There are other people that will do that. There will be features you can, preset features you can go ahead and use. So no real tips I'd give myself other than don't expect it to be too easy. Learning everything is a big task, and I do plan on doing proper tuition videos from scratch, from the creating of a module to areas, much like this stream, except I would be explaining the very basics, starting at the beginning and hopefully going to quite advanced area building. So that's definitely something I'd like to do in future. Okay, I'm going to be saving this now. I think that's me done for the time being. I have to go to the supermarket, tidy the house, feed children, check homework, all that kind of stuff. Nobody asking me anything on Twitch. Any other questions or feedback before I stop the stream? Or any areas you maybe want to have a quick look at in the Underdark, see how they look in the tool set? Yes, Spire's point there about how it's important to know the difference between static and non-static placeables, absolutely. Um, Another beginner tip, consider the pathfinding. It's the biggest performance drain on a server. If you put a bunch of placeables down and then you have monsters there, it is really not going to work very well when players start heading in there. So just see if I have anything else underway. Any other projects here that I haven't yet finished? I don't think so. Alright, well, I'm going to turn off now. Thanks to anyone that was viewing, and remember, you'll be able to watch this entire video back repeatedly for the next 14 days on my Twitch channel of Lord Irongron. Imagine that.